Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Environmental Social Justice. I am your host, Wendy Nystrom, with my co-host, Mr. Joel Vendette. Today's guest, we have Mr. Mark Berkman. He is the CEO of the Organization of Social Media Safety. So welcome, Mark. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Wendy.
One of the things that when we got together, when we were first introduced, was about social media and safety. And you started an organization that I'd like you to talk about. But first, I'm going to plug the fact that you have been on New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, Jesus, The Doctors, Fox, and NBC News. That's huge. The fact that you've had that kind of reach tells us that social media is a bit problematic. So if you could explain what your organization does and how you got started.
Of course. So yeah, I mean, you're right. Social media is in the news these days. It's of concern to parents. This is something that impacts almost every family, regardless of demographic. So it's an issue that is really top of mind for so many people. The Organization for Social Media Safety, we began really in 2016, and I'll give you the backstory there. My co-founder, Ed Peisner, his then 14-year-old son, Jordan, was at a fast food place after school with some friends when he was seriously attacked by another teen he didn't know. While he was being attacked, associates of the attacker filmed it. They put it up on social media where it went viral, now having been viewed by millions. I happened at the time to have been a chief of staff for a California State Assembly member. And coincidentally, this video of Jordan being attacked was in my inbox within about 2 hours. Ed Peisner really soon thereafter resolved to ensure that no other family had to deal with such a horrific scenario. He wanted to do something, so he started reaching out to local elected officials. We connected. We were very aware intuitively that this was a big problem that no one was dealing with. And we did research, and we found that since the birth of major social media around 2006 to this point in 2016, what we now call social media motivated violence was actually doubling every year, to the point in 2016 where there were hundreds and thousands of these types of videos available through social media, being watched by millions, most of them teens and even tweens, by the way. And so we started legislating on it. I ended up drafting a piece of legislation called Jordan's Law, which is first in the nation law to target what we now call social media motivated violence. Now, while we were doing that and focused on this violence issue, it really became clear that there were a range of social media related dangers. So dangers caused or either made worse through social media use. And we can talk about those, but dangers like cyberbullying, trafficking, and a long list of other dangers. There was no organization out there serving as a consumer protection organization focused on social media and trying to prevent or protect families from these dangers. And so we really felt compelled to start the Organization for Social Media Safety, which we did. We're now the first and leading consumer protection organization, again, focused on social media. Our mission is to protect against all social media related dangers. And we do that using a consumer protection oriented model, which is just a fancy way of saying that we have 3 departments working to make social media safe. So we work through education. We are in K through 12 schools across the country, teaching essential social media safety skills to students, parents, and educators. We do advocacy work. So we work on legislation at all levels of government to enhance social media safety. And we do technology work. So we work on software and apps that provide real-time protection against any and all social media related dangers.
Well, there's a lot to unpack here. Okay, so we'll just jump right in here. I mean, I personally think that social media has become a necessary evil. I mean, I think it started off as a great platform to really connect people and bring them together. Unfortunately, what it seems like has happened is as these algorithms have started taking over all these things, you click on one thing and the next thing you know, your feed is inundated with certain postings, shall we say. So I love that there's, all these things out there to advise people on what to do, but how do you combat the algorithm that, you know, I mean, recently those testimonies on the Hill and all this kind of stuff where they're talking about it's really about the negativity, because the negativity drives comments, which drives more viewers. How do you combat that?
I mean, so you talked about it being a necessary evil. For children, at least, we want to push a little bit against that narrative and have people start considering whether it's a necessary technology for younger children. There's clearly mass adoption, but we've skipped the step of weighing risks and benefits. And I have this conversation a lot where people assume there are benefits for younger teens and tweens, and certainly younger benefits that seem to outweigh the risks. And we want to push back against that because the risks are substantial. The benefits actually appear to be fairly small for our younger teens and tweens. That research needs to evolve significantly. So I can't sit here and say that's based on data, but we are trying to have people think critically about that narrative that has clearly taken hold. The algorithm is a good question. So we started, back in the day with Friendster, where people would go on and write nice testimonials about you, right? Remember that? And you were just connecting with friends, and then revenue interest and profit interest for the businesses took over. So they make money from your time, from your children's time, from your time that you spend on the platforms, and they need to drive that somehow. So you mentioned the algorithm. What gets people watching? It's salient content, either violent or on the extremes or sexually explicit. That is what's driving a lot of the content we're seeing on your more classic feed-based platforms. That's problematic. But then there's certainly issues with other types of platforms as well. So Snapchat is a platform where mostly children are going on and they can send self-deleting messages to each other. That's not typically a good idea when it comes to safety. So we see a range of harms that are happening to children through the use of a platform like Snapchat. So there's a lot of reasons for the dangers out there. The algorithm is a big one. And your question was, how do we go about that? So there's a reason, sorry, long way of getting to that. There's a reason that we have 3 departments. It's a very intentional structuring that we have. And all of those departments are meant to work together, not only to make social media safer and put out programming, but also so that we continue to accumulate expertise and stay at the forefront of knowledge when it comes to social media safety. And so the education piece is critical, teaching consumers and especially, again, younger users, how these algorithms work, why they're seeing what they are, why people are motivated to post things, to get those likes, those shares, and those views. What does that lead to? And so that awareness is critical. The tech is incredibly important. We're working on issues like software like third-party safety software. So that's software especially for parents so that they can get alerts when dangerous content comes across their child's social media accounts. So to help either filter out or provide immediate intervention when the algorithm drives content into an account that shouldn't be there. We want to see that more widespread and working for adults as well. And so adults should be able to fine tune what they want to see at the end of the day, not the platform themselves. Okay, and then finally, last year is the advocacy. So legislating and holding the platforms accountable for what they're doing, either being transparent in their algorithms, making sure that their algorithms are not inherently unsafe. That is also an essential part of this puzzle.
Okay, so now I'm going to talk about something completely, well, sort of along the same things. We, excuse me. So you kind of go onto these social media platforms, and a lot of it is about posting the best image of your life. And a lot of it, let's be honest, is just BS. So when you're talking about like the harms that are happening to children, a lot of it comes from body image and what it's doing to them mentally. It's kind of, you're not allowed to have thighs. You're not allowed to have pores, and I think it's impacting, I know a lot of teenagers, the reports are out there saying that they're now wanting to get plastic surgery to look like this fictionalized version of what's being online. But I think it's fascinating. And I know I've said this for years. I know it's probably terrible to say, but we've subjected women and teenage girls to this for so long that it's been going over to the men's world as well. And so I think we're seeing it on both genders. And I guess that's where equality comes into play. for better or worse. I know that's a terrible thing to joke about, but we're kind of doing it to ourselves now. You know, a guy has to have a 6-pack of abs. A woman has to have a gap, you know, the thigh gap. Like you have to basically look like you have one rib in your entire body with no pores, perfect hair, makeup 24/7. So it's great to talk about, you know, all the programs, but how do you get to people to understand what this is doing to their psyches? Like this is really impacting body image.
Their mental health, yeah.
Yeah.
Such an important question. The range of these issues we're seeing on social media. By the way, I just learned about the nose gap, and apparently there's a thing with the distance between your nose and your lip, right? And this is a thing that's trending on TikTok. These are incredibly dangerous pieces of content out there that are having significant impact. And you're right, Joel, on younger women, younger men, tweens and teens who are just trying to develop their sense of self, their sense of body image.
It's dangerous.
It's incredibly dangerous. It's also, and again, I don't have research that connects us, but we do have research showing anxiety going up as social media has grown, suicides going up. There's certainly research connecting social media use with eating disorders, body dysmorphia. And so this is such a concern. Some of the best research out there is Instagram's own research on what their platform is doing. And you may have seen this in the news last year. It was where the whistleblower Frances Haugen released these documents, and they showed Instagram's own research suggesting that after using the platform, this was particularly young women, were having issues with body image and sense of beauty and self. So really problematic. And so what we teach parents and students is that this is happening. We try to go into theories of why it's happening. And so we're finding that on average, by the way, this is kind of a fundamental point, that teens and tweens are using social media 4 to 5 hours a day. That's based on our own data. So it's not necessarily a nationally representative study, but we are confident it's a good picture in how much our children are using social. And these concepts apply to adults as well, by the way. But
I would have thought it was more.
Well, I mean, that's the average, by the way. So we go we only ask up to 7 hours, I believe. And, you know, we'll find 20, 25% plus are at that 7-hour range. And that's self-reported. When we go work with families, you could actually pick up the device and see, based on the numbers, how long they've been using it. It's way more than adults and children realize they're using it for. Nobody wants to be using it that much, even the teens. But 5 hours a day. And so what they're looking at on TikTok, on Instagram, even on Snapchat as well, they're looking at edited photos and videos. And so, as you all probably know, even TikTok now has video filters, which your brain cannot tell the difference. And so they're looking at unrealistic depictions of beauty and what people look like. And you could think in your mind that we were doing this with magazines when we were kids, but we weren't looking, most of us at least, weren't looking at those magazines for 5 hours a day. And those pictures in the magazines weren't of our peers and friends. And so that's potentially really damaging to kind of the sense of reality. It's distorting reality for these kids. And so that's photo editing. We also teach about photo curation. So remember, when you go on Instagram, everyone wants the best picture. They want the best content up there. The TikTok, they want the best video. And so, you know, my daughter taught me, by the way, that if you're posting a pic, you have to get your camera up here, because I guess you can't do it down for some reason, because that looks bad. Right? You gotta do it up here. You take the picture, and what happens? What does everyone do, even adults? You erase the picture because it's not the right one. Exactly. And you keep going until you take that perfect picture. And so with the perfect angle, perfect pose, perfect lighting. And so that's photo curation. And so editing and curation together, 5 hours a day, it is absolutely, we would say, and this is in theory, I want to be careful because the evidence is still evolving, but in theory, this is distorting a healthy sense of what bodies look like, what beauty is, and it's driving a lot of the stuff that you were talking about, Joel, with eating disorders and negative body image.
And it's funny because, I mean, you're talking about, you know, all the studies that are being done, and I think we've kind of lost track that in the grand scheme of things, this is still fairly new technology.
Yep.
I mean, you know, you're talking about, what, 10 or 15 years. So I think what started out as an initial way for people to really connect with each other, that's kind of what it was. I mean, when, you know, MySpace, Friendster, you know, Facebook, all these apps for programs first started up, it was about like, oh, how are you? What's going on? It's great. I haven't seen you in years. It's great to connect. How's your life? And now it's turned into basically these, for some people, I'm not going to say for everybody, but like you'll post something and it's just a way for people to go online and just be rude. Like, you know, or just sit there and be like, why? And I read some of the stuff and I'm just like, this took you more time to type it than to just ignore it. And it's like, I'm trying to understand the psyche behind that. Like, what is it that drives people to go out of their way to just comment, I don't like this. Okay, I don't care. Like, that's great. You don't like it, scroll past it. Like, as you're dealing with people, how are we changing to just say, like, it's better to just sit there and just be, and just say whatever we want versus just saying, move on.
Isn't that narcissism?
I mean, that's essentially what it's breeding, right? Yeah. So we teach a few different dynamics of social media that are driving unsafe or unhealthy behaviors on social media. So there's a list of them, but to highlight 2 or 3. First, again, I mentioned this earlier, the drive to get the likes, the shares, and the views. That's social approval. It's hugely motivating for kids and for adults. So it's driving a lot of that behavior. And again, what gets the likes, the shares, and the views? It's salient content. So it's either extremist, hate-fueled, explicit. That's what gets people to click. That's what gets people to share it. We certainly have evidence at this point that platforms prioritize that because it creates more engagement. It makes them more money. And so, especially teaching younger users, think about this every time you're seeing a post. Think about why someone posted this. Why did a challenge go viral? It's usually because it has something that's unkind that people are kind of clicked in to want to view. So thinking about likes, shares, and views. What was my other point there? Again, you're not again, but you're not looking at someone face to face, and so they're based on the evidence. There's a reduction in empathy there as well when you post. And so one of the things that we teach, particularly students, and we teach parents to require of children, and I recommend this for adults as well, is that when you see content that's unsafe, that violates a platform's terms of service, so hate speech, cyberbullying, sexually explicit content, we want people to go and block the user that posted that from their platform and report the content to the platform so that it can be taken down. 2 reasons. So again, having that content taken down, helping the rest of your digital community is incredibly important. We want our children to be what's called upstanders when they're on social media. We want to model that as adults as well. Take down the hate speech. You can't be anti-racist if you're just swiping through it and letting it stay out there. More importantly, because a lot of platforms, especially this year, they've gutted their trust and safety staff. They're not taking everything down, which I think is horrific. But more importantly, by going and doing this every time, you're preventing the normalization of this content. You're actually physically saying, I reject this. It's not okay with me. And so that other piece of the puzzle here is normalization. We're going on and we're seeing this type of content happen over and over again. We get numb to it. We think it's normal. And then we're more likely to be driven by the need for those likes, shares, and views.
Can I jump in real quick? One thing when you talked about the likes and the clicks, a friend of mine told me when he posted, he runs his own video services company. And he said, could you guys hit the emoji for the angry face? Because the algorithms will pick that up more and spread it more. Is there truth to that?
We can't say for sure because the algorithms are not transparent. But there's certainly evidence that indicates that's true for a lot of platforms. They want to spread content that leaves people angry because it's more engaging and it keeps you on the platform longer. And again, that's how they're making their money.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to jump in real quick on that one because it's just promoting hate. And also I have reported things on Facebook in the past and that I thought, that's just not okay. And they said, this does not violate anything. There's nothing wrong with it. Your request has been denied. And I thought, oh, okay, I guess I'm too sensitive. But I guess we just keep at it.
It's something we're working on legislatively to hold the platforms to more account in their trust and safety process and how they're transparent with their terms of service. There was legislation actually that we endorsed last year out of California, requires transparency in terms of service and transparency on enforcement. But again, even if the platforms may not be taking it down, going through that process for all social media users, adults and children, we think is really important, because you really have to work on preventing the normalization of some of this content that's really horrific and is causing an impact globally.
And it's so funny because going back to the likes and everything, I remember it wasn't too long ago, I think it was Instagram, had said that they were going to stop counting the likes. You know, at one point in time, this was the rollout they were going to do. And that went, people lost their freaking minds over that, because, you know, people are making money on this. They've learned how to monetize it. And I understand that.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
You know, so it's like, I remember obviously that never happened, or if it did, I think it was for like one update and then it went away. But so going back to, like, you know, when we're talking about some of the content that's out there, and we're talking about stuff that, whether it's sexually explicit or it's violent, it's a lot easier to report and to just say, boom, this is really bad content. When we're starting to talk about, you know, the photoshopping, or, you know, and I freely admit some of my photos online, I've gotten rid of some crow's feet. I admit that. You know, my bag's a little dark, I'm gonna lighten them up. But when you're talking about, like, you know, you've seen the posts online where they'll show you a before and an after.
Yeah.
And, you know, and it's like, these are two completely different people. How do parents talk to their kids about this? Because, you know, parents have a lot to deal with right now, whether it's violence in schools or it's, you know, I'm not getting on those subjects, but I mean, they've got a lot of stuff already to talk to their kids. How do you tell your kids this isn't real? Because how do you prove that?
I mean, I think that the easiest way to do it is to start and have the simple conversation to begin with, that this isn't real. And you need to repeat that over time as your children get older. It's not fancy, but just getting that message out there and repeating it has a significant impact. And so that's really important. That's what we teach parents. We also teach kids, we show them the visual examples. So being aware of it is a big part of the battle. And that's true for really the full range of dangers. Most children using social media, also a lot of adults, are not aware of the full range of these dangers. They're a risk of when they use social media. And you cannot, whoever, adult, child, you cannot protect yourself from a danger if you're not aware of it. You don't understand how it works. So that simple conversation really is a big piece of it, and the repetition is what we recommend.
So now I have a quick, because obviously one of the big things that annoys me about social media is the body image and what it's doing to people. I have a real issue with that because I've suffered from body image issues, and I probably still, and I know I still do. So, you know, we've gone from this extremity where we're basically saying you can't have pores, you can't have, you know, more than like 0.1 gram of cellulite anywhere on your entire body cumulatively. But so we've gone from that to basically showing, you know, now companies are showing normal size people. I'm not saying plus size, I'm going to say normal size in ads. And we're getting pushback from that as well. So it's like, at what point in time do we just say, people, just live your freaking life and stop worrying about this crap? Stop trying to be something that you're not. And if you're shaped this way, fantastic. If you're shaped this way, fantastic. You know, and social media plays a big role in this, you know, for
advertisers.
Yeah. You know, so how do we combat this? Because it seems like no matter what you try to do to be inclusive, you're shot down or you're yelled at.
Yes. So
sorry, I know that's a big one, but yeah.
I mean, first, again, going back to that, the awareness is critical for children and adults. Limiting the amount of time that you're on social media, again, no matter your age, is also critical. In theory, this reality distortion concept, this dynamic, has less of an opportunity to make an impact on you if you're regulating the amount of time that you're on social media. If you're doing 30 minutes a day, that's probably going to be a far less significant effect than 5 hours a day scrolling through Instagram and looking at this over and over again. So regulating the amount of time is huge. And then the more drastic measure, which certainly we want to see more of with our younger people is holding off on getting onto these platforms while they're still developing.
Yeah.
We know they're so dangerous. Why are 4th and 5th graders on Instagram and TikTok? It really doesn't make sense to us. And so that's a big piece of it as well. For adults, it's just limiting that time, being really in touch with yourself, what your conditions are. If you have a history of eating disorders or body dysmorphia, depression, you know, social media probably isn't the place that you should be spending your time. Because we know it's having an impact, and we teach this with parents and children as well, but it applies to adults certainly. If there are risk factors there, be mindful of that. If you notice after you've spent an hour on social media and you're getting off, I don't feel so good about myself right now. You know, I saw this, I'm fixating on these few images I saw. Be mindful of that and say, you know what, tomorrow I'm going to take a holiday from social. I'm going to take a week off, check in with myself, see if I'm feeling better. And if I am, don't go back.
You know, I'm glad you brought that up. One of the things, because we have a little bit of time left before the half hour, is short-term memory loss people are experiencing. Inability to have recall on certain things is developing with children and adults. I see adults and children glued to their phones while walking down the street, whether they're walking their dogs. I saw people on their bicycles doing this. It's an addiction. And this is an addiction that needs to be broken and managed, just like anything else, you know, everything in moderation, including moderation. And I love the fact, Mark, that you just said, put the phone down, go outside, go see people in real life and see how you feel, because I guarantee you, folks, you're going to feel better. If you lock yourself away on social media and only see what's being fed to you by what an algorithm feels that you need to see, that's not life. That's not reality. And we're just getting further and further down that rabbit hole. So before we let you go, Mark, could you tell people how they can find you, how they can maybe volunteer, donate? You're a 501c3, donate people. It's a good cause. Tell them all about how they can get in touch with you.
Yes, support is critical for us to do this work. It is a lot of work that needs to be done. There are millions and millions of families being harmed by social media related danger. So thank you for bringing that up, Wendy. We rely on the support of the grassroots out there listening and watching today. So you can find us at socialmediasafety.org. There you can find free virtual resources. We have a free virtual parent course. You can find how to get us into school. So introducing us to your school principal is a big way to get our programming out there. It's also how we do research as well and learn more. And you can learn about our legislative initiatives, sign various petitions to help our work in Congress and in state capitals. And of course, you can help support us financially, which allows us to do this work. So that's on the site as well, socialmediasafety.org. Feel free to contact us with any questions as well.
Excellent. Joel, did you have any final questions before we let Mark go?
I do have check one, and I'm hoping this isn't too much. At what point in time do you think some of these social media organizations are going to come to the table and be like, oh crap, we've created an issue, and do something about it?
I'm hoping every day. The problem is, are they going to be willing to make changes that directly impact their bottom line? And so far, the answer there is no. There's a lot of optics, there's a lot of talking points, but we haven't seen a lot of changes that demonstrably impact safety, unfortunately, despite the clear evidence of all of these dangers that we've discussed throughout this conversation.
You know, we always say, it comes down to, when in doubt, it comes down to the dollar.
Always. Yeah. Unfortunately, that is absolutely true. So, and we kind of need to retrain our brains that not everything is about money, and know what your enough is so you can live a healthy life. So on that closing, Mark, thank you so much. This has been very informative, and hopefully people will, take some of this advice to heart and look up your company and look up what they can do to help. On that note, guys, I'm Wendy Nystrom with Environmental Social Justice with my co-host Joel Vendette. Thank you again, Mark Berkman. You guys are doing amazing work. You guys take care. See you next time.